this is Sculptamold, which is a sort of a paper mache kind of mix. It's got a little plaster in it, I think, and it's got some lumpy texture, which is nice for creating land and landforms. So what I'm doing is just touching up where I cut out some of the existing Sculptamold to get these walls in place. You can see this line is pretty straight. It's a little unnatural, so I'm going to smooth the land up at a bit of an incline here, and hopefully that'll look a little more natural. Okay, so we're doing a little bit of scenery here today. This little scene came together after I figured out what to do with the end of the layout here, which is to build a street that's a little higher than the rest of the layout, and then eventually I will add this elevated subway. This is just a mock-up for now. So I needed to find a way to transition from here to here, so I came up with these retaining walls. This is a concrete one, this is a stone one, and now I've blended in some Sculptamold and some foam underneath, and we're going to add the dirt and vegetation to this. I opted not to do graffiti on these walls just because I'm assuming that it was a less appealing wall to do graffiti on because of the stone, and the vegetation is going to come up pretty thick and heavy, so it might be inaccessible to people. So we're going to get some dirt on here first to match the dirt that's here already. But first, before we do that, we'll paint it a dark brown so that if any scenery chips away, you won't see this bright white. There's also some gaps here between the wall castings. Also, this didn't come together as cleanly as I liked. I tried to bevel it and get a nice tight miter, but there's some gaps here, so we'll just cover that up with some foam scenery. So I'm using some black paint. This is just flat black latex. I use this for the fascia of my layout. You can use dark brown, you could use dark green, it really doesn't matter. But there's no way I'm going to be able to paint all this at once and have the paint be wet. I want it to be wet so I could use it as a sort of glue for the first pass of dirt that I put down. It'll be just a little gentle here where it's wet. So that's enough of an area that I'm willing to work with and not worry about it drying too much. This is fine sifted dirt from Scenic Express. I don't know if they continued to sell it, but you can always get dirt from your backyard and let it dry out and sift it yourself. It's always tricky when doing these vertical surfaces like a hill with some dirt. A lot of it's going to run down to the hill, run down to the bottom of the hill, especially when we add our white glue and water mixture to secure it. But there are ways we can help slow it down by putting on some more dirt as it's wet. So we'll be doing that shortly. And in these corners, don't be so concerned about getting all the white. Like I said, we will either put a wash in there with some stain or we'll put some scenery. So you can see here all of our dirt has fallen down the hill, but I put a little extra dirt at the bottom, and now I could sort of brush it up and it'll stick to the wet paint a little bit. Not completely, but a little bit more is better than nothing. Where the hell is my lid? Oh, there we go. Let's cover this up before it ends up on the layout. So you can see what an awkward spot this is to work. First of all, my layout's kind of high. It's 55 inches to the top of the surface here. And this is kind of a really tiny corner. This is only about 18 inches from the wall. And then you have to kind of lean over and also not hit your head on the drop ceiling above. So it's a bit of a pain. So I am soaking this with isopropyl alcohol. And when you first spray the dirt. Don't spray it too close. You want to kind of be high above and mist everything. If not, when the dirt's so dry, it's just going to blast it because some air will come out along with the alcohol. So high above, and then when you get close, give it a soaking. And we'll have to do this several times throughout the process. You can see some black is showing through. We'll either put more dirt eventually or more scenery will cover it. This always looks like a mess as you're working on it, but all this will get closed up with scenery. So I've got some extra dirt standing by because we're going to need it to soak up the glue when it gets too messy. This is a bottle of white glue and water mixed 50-50, half and half, and this is a hair dye bottle. And these bottles are great, except eventually this connection to the cap gets a little glued up and doesn't stay on, and I've had a few instances where I've dumped more glue than I'd like the whole bottle onto a scenery. So I've got some duct tape on there. So I'm just going to quickly make some passes with this. This is just like you would do for securing ballast. I'm not going to do this half because it's just too much to work with. So we'll do a little at a time. Now here's where it starts to get messy. Our glue starts to run down the hill. We don't really like that, but there's no way around it. But what we can do is mitigate some of it by putting some more dirt down to soak it up. Give this another soaking again. This is another reason why it's good to seal the work around you. Like this wall was sealed with a matte sealer. The buildings are often sealed with matte sealer. It protects it from spraying alcohol, so you can spray till your heart's content and not worry about anything melting or washing off or getting diluted. This has to get blended eventually too from adding this diorama recently. So maybe I'll put some dirt there, but I've got to kill the white with something. So while this is drying, I'm going to take the time to got some alcohol and ink. So just bleed into this. This was Sculptamold. There was a gap here from adding this diorama. So I'm going to put some black wash on it. So I'm just going to use white glue right out of the bottle, just so it's a little more controlled than spraying the alcohol onto the scenery here. Then I'm going to blend the seam with. So this is just Aleene's tacky glue right from the bottle. And I basically just want a green ridge or a green line of vegetation between the concrete and the track here. And I'm using at least three different grades of scenery foam. This is flock and turf and some fine green and some larger clump stuff. And I'm going to use all three of them. And that's basically the biggest point of this video when we get the scenery over here, is that you should be using more than 3 types of vegetation. I would say 5 is good, 7 is great. Use 10 if you have them, because it's basically nature is just dozens and dozens of different species of grasses and bushes and plants. And if you just used one, it's going to look kind of weird. So the more the better. We'll go back and add some more bushes to this once it's dry. This is leaf litter. I'm modeling the summer, but for some reason this seems to look good. Some dead leaves from the fall that are still left around. It makes a nice texture. Use it on the rooftops. Now when you do something like this, it looks a little odd because this would really kind of carry over to here, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a little bit down the center of the track here and here, and now it looks like this whole swath of green is growing in a direction. It wouldn't just stop there. I'm going to try to be a little neat and brush all this off the sidewalk here. So in a case like this, I want to put some white glue after all, but I don't want to spray with my spray bottle. If I spray this right now, I'm going to blast all this away, and I don't want to do that. So this is an ear syringe. I've filled it with some alcohol, and now I can just spot apply my alcohol and soak this without disturbing the arrangement. And nothing is moved. So anytime you want to do something more surgical with your scenery, use this squeegee. I don't want to saturate this, just a little bit. Sometimes you have to make a second pass. You'll see that once this dries, some of the scenery will be loose. You can always go back, so don't do too much. Okay, so this isn't that dry yet, but that's okay for what our next step is going to be. The first thing is to do a first pass, and this is from Scenic Express, Spring Green Fine Flock and Turf Scenic Texture. And it's the finest size scenery material we have at the moment, so we're just going to do a pass so we get sort of just a green tint on our space here. This is sort of a base coat. You can see we're having trouble sticking it to the hill. It just rolls down, so we might have to, sometimes if you actually throw it at the hill, it works. Okay, here's number 2. This is layer number 2. This is green, grass green coarse, flock and turf. So it's basically the same stuff as before, but a little bigger. So that also means we're not going to cover the same amount. We're going to just do some random patches here and there. And that's enough of that one. And number 3 is underbrush, medium green. This is from Woodland Scenics. It's a little bit clumpier, a little darker green. It's a little too much there. Again, I'm trying to keep this area clear for some details. You know, and if we don't like this, we can always rip it out or cover it with some more grass later. So, but already you could see the 3 different sizes and shades and what a difference it makes. And then here's number 4. This is Farm Pasture Blend, Flock and Turf. This is a little different. It's got some polyfiber grasses in it and different size and color shapes of foam. We'll just do a sprinkling here and there at a random. So here's number 5. This is light green coarse flock and turf. You can see this is a much brighter green. So what that means is we want to be a little careful with this and not go crazy, because it's a little too bright if you did the whole thing. So you can see just a couple of sprinkles. Kind of jumps out. Some different colored vegetation. And that's plenty. So number 6 would be this super turf leaf litter that we showed you before. Again, this is literally crushed up leaves, dried leaves. And no matter what the season, unless they raked all these leaves in this weird place in the city, there'll be some leaves around, so don't worry about what season it is. It just adds a nice texture. I do tend to grind it up with my fingers to make it even smaller for HO scale. And right now it's a good time to just sort of step back and just see how it looks in the overall scene. Before we go any further, let's secure some of this with our squeegee ball here. So this is still drying, but that's okay. We're going to keep going. This is pull apart grass. This is from Bachman, and it comes in these sheets, and we could just literally pull it apart and then put swaths of grass where we want. So I've pulled a big piece like this out. It's almost like a little carpet, but it's got no backing, which is great. We can just shape it to where we want it. So all this foam stuff is more of a base coat, these first few layers. It's these grasses and bushes that really kind of make the scenery look great. So that's not glued down, but we can glue it down. We're going to take some of our alcohol and our squeegee and take your glue again. And only in a couple of spots it should find its way to the bottom. Eventually this will be secure with just a few spots. You can go back with some more alcohol to help the glue work its way down. We'll consider this layer number 7. So layer number 8, this is Bushes by Martin Welberg. This is incredible stuff. This just comes on a sheet, and again you can pull it apart. So I'm just going to take a big chunk off to work with. And I've got a little palette of glue here and some tweezers. So this is kind of like if you've already used Prairie Tufts. Same idea, it's just a little bigger and clumpier. Just grab it by your tweezers. Dip it in some white glue. He's going to go right here. So I'm leaving a path here so it looks traveled and lived in where people have been doing graffiti. So I'm not going to put the bushes up against this wall too much. So here's number 9. This is Bushes Type B, also from Martin Welberg. And these come sort of pre-grown as little trees or little tall bushes. I can pull them right off and plant them. And to do that, we'll just take our tweezers, poke a hole somewhere. Let's try right here. And this could get a little messy, but we'll make it work. There's a danger here if I keep going. 1, 2, and I put a third one. Those are going to be equally spaced, so you want to be careful when you're doing something like this. If I use a third one, I need it to be over here or over here. I can't make them look like they were planted. This needs to be natural looking. So be careful of your placement. So if I did that, it looks like someone arranged that. So I'm going to put it right there. Let's see how that works. Now, a lot of this is still wet because we're rushing through the video and not waiting for things to dry, but you might want to wait a little longer than I do. There you go. So this will be number 10. This is the same kind of bush, a little different. This is Bushes Type C from Martin Welberg, and you can see it's a lighter shade of green, and it's got some yellow flecks in it, so it looks a little different. This is a good time to step back again and take a look at things that we need to fix. This crap is driving me nuts. Eventually there'll be a piece of masonite here, but this part, this exposed foam that's painted black, it's just kind of killing the whole thing. So I'm going to have to touch this up with some black right now and then get some greenery in there to clean it up. Now we're just going to clean this up a little bit. So let's call this number 11. This is Adirondack Blend, Flock and Turf. It's got a lot of stuff in it. So I'm just going to press it into here. Slightly better, slightly worse. The truth is it really needs the fascia to come right here to cover all this, so this is kind of temporary. Let's just pretend that never happened. This kind of stuff drives me nuts, this white Sculptamold. We're going to have to deal with that next. So we'll call this number 12. These are Prairie Tufts, also on a mat that we can pull off one at a time. Dip into some glue. So let's call this number 13. This is bushes type D from Martin Wellberg again. So now you can see a lot of this needs to be cleaned up. We're going to have to vacuum this. Hopefully we won't pull away anything that's not too dry. Oh, it's not glued in, is it? All right. So I really want more of a defined edge here with the dirt because I do want to put some details. So I've got a lot of this foam here, but I'm actually going to cover some of it up. Just a little bit. I want this to be a path for people to walk and here as well. And then over here. So that's as far as we're going to go for the video. Eventually we'll add some more little prairie tufts here and there, and we've got a couple of gaps to fill with some scenery, and after that we'll start doing some detailing. Pallets, oil drums, litter and junk, and we've got a rusty truck we want to add here, and we'll work a little scene around that as well. So I hope you can see the benefit of using multiple scenery materials. You certainly don't have to use a dozen or more, but at least use 3, 4, 5, or 6, and you'll get a lot more realistic result in the way your scene looks. I want to thank our Patreon supporters. If you want to see more content of what we do here on the layout, what we do in the shop, new kit releases, sneak peeks, tips and techniques, and more, we post every day, sometimes twice a day. We'll probably finish detailing this scene and post some pictures of how this turns out there, and we hope to see you there. And if you want to see more HO scale kits, we have over 100 HO scale kits on our website, foskits.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.